Good evening, everybody. It's Cody Higley, and this is the latest installment of OMW The Watchmen's Report. And tonight we're joined by our regular hosts, Jason Foreman, Robert Landon, and tonight's special guest is Marion City Councilwoman representing the 4th Ward, Twila Laing. Twila, thank you for
Hi,
joining the Watchmen's Report.
thank you for asking me.
Now, we've got a lot to talk about on tonight's show, folks. There's been quite a few developments in the city of Marion at the council level, primarily, and also in the auditors and the treasurer's offices. So, we're going to dig into some of those issues. But first, Twyla, tell the audience here a little bit about you, where you came from. Are you born, bred, and raised in Marion, Ohio? Tell us your life story and how you got up to the point of deciding to run for city council.
Oh, wow. That's how long do we have?
Yeah,
An hour?
synopsis.
Actually, I was born in New Mexico. My father was in the Air Force and met my mother. And so when he got out of the Air Force, he was originally from Marion and returned to Marion. So that would have been in 1955. I was 6 months old when they moved back here. And I've been here until 1984. Went to school here in Marion, graduated from Harding. And then in 1984, my husband enlisted in the Army. And we then transferred. He was stationed in Washington State. And we lived in Washington State and rotated between Washington State and Europe for 27 years until he retired. And then I moved back to Marion in 2002, mostly for family reasons and the such. And then I just tried to live a quiet life, raise my grandson. I had grandsons that I was raising at the time, and they all got older and they have families of their own now. And I retired thinking that I would just live the rest of my life out quietly, maybe move to Florida or, be a snowbird or whatever. And I was approached to run for city council. Um,
Who approached you, Twyla, for that?
the Republican Club
Okay, okay.
approached me. And I told them that it wasn't on my bucket list.
Mm.
um, and I'd have to think about it. And it took me about 2.5 months. And I was watching a podcast, and they made a statement. If you're not happy with what's going on in the government, then you need to get up off your couch because it starts at the local level. And that's kind of what pushed me to say yes then. Had I known what I know now, I probably would have said no.
So, were you always politically involved, or at least politically aware? Because, as I understand it, your father, Thomas Endo, was a three-term councilman for representing the 5th Ward in Marion City.
Right.
Was that something that you always, as a
Always. Yep.
child,
Yep. I
had
was,
exposure to?
yes. So I had exposure to that, yes, at an early age. And um, government, history, economics, those were kind of the areas that I really enjoyed in school. Um, so I've always kept up on politics, but I never got involved in politics. Um, so I've always followed it.
Did your father confide with you during that time? Like, we're talking 1972 to 1978 is when he
I would have
served.
been in my, yeah, I would have Yeah, I would have been in my early 20s. And um, we had a lot of conversations of things
Was
that
there
were
anything that he shared with you from those? Because that's when you look at the history of Marion, that's kind of the beginning of a rapid descent in
right,
the city's history. Because late 70s, early mid 80s, you had a collapse of industry in the city,
but
and the
very much,
challenges,
yeah.
high unemployment, and everything. So he was just kind of at the beginning of that process. Was there anything that like he shared to you, kind of confided in you about the realities, maybe that the public really wasn't aware? They
He
say,
Yeah,
you
he did talk about the finances and the such, and dad also worked for the railroad. And that's why he didn't continue on city council, because when the railroad left Marion, all the industry left Marion, and then the railroad left Marion. Erie went, Conrail came in, bought it, took over the Erie, and then Amtrak came in, took over Conrail, and he stayed in that loop, but he got transferred to Toledo, and then from Toledo he got transferred to Chicago. So when he got transferred to Toledo, he couldn't be on city council any longer because he was living in Toledo. We were still in Marion. He was coming back on the weekends and the such. But when he got transferred to Chicago and was doing the Chicago to St. Louis run, that's when my parents moved to Indiana then. Um, so he he did talk about it a lot, things that were going on, a lot of questionable things that were going on at the time. But
what was his relationship with Mayor Quaintance, who was the mayor until Malone unseated him, I believe in
um,
'78. But the newspaper articles that I've read kind of indicate that there was a little bit of uh, conflict potentially between your dad and Mayor Quaintance. Is that something that you're aware of, or was it kind of overplayed in the papers?
uh, I think it might have been a little overplayed in the paper. They had their differences, like some people have, but I never really heard him say anything really bad about him.
Okay. Yeah.
So I think
And
it just was a difference of opinion, and probably, like a lot of things, overplayed in the media.
that happens. It certainly does. It certainly does. All right. So you come back to Marion, and then what was your history from? So you arrived in what, 2002? You said.
2002. So I have two sons, and I have uh, eight grandsons, and two great grandsons.
All
So
males?
yep, all
Oh
boys.
wow, that's a
um,
powerful Y chromosome there,
yeah,
right?
I'm not quite sure where that comes from, but yeah. So, raising my boys, my oldest son, he went into the army. Well, he went into the Navy, um, and because he wanted to be a medic, and he wanted to be a doctor. So he figured go into the Navy, become a medic, go to school. Of course, your Navy medics are always connected with your Marine Corps. So then he was connected to the Marine Corps in San Diego. Um, Tried to get into the medical portion of that, but you got to have a congressman vouch for you. And of course, we didn't have any connections then. So he kind of got his dreams smelched or whatever, and left the Marines and after his time was up, and then went and reenlisted in the Army. So he's been in the Navy, the Marines, and the Army, where he retired from. So
Oh wow, he
so
was a
he
lifer then.
Yeah, he retired, and then my youngest son, he had moved back here to Marion, and it was his four boys that I was helping to raise.
Okay. Now, I do think that for somebody that moved away, so you moved with your husband going to Germany, Washington State, all around. What year did you leave for that?
And we left in 1984. So, and that was 84 is when the economy just really bottomed out. My husband worked for Marion Power Shovel. He was a welder for Marion Powder Shovel. And of course, when they closed down, and that was pretty much it for everything in Marion at that point. You couldn't walk down any street that there wasn't 6 or 7 houses for sale. Um, the market just, it just bottomed out. Everything was bad, and you couldn't find a job. And he was 34 years old when he enlisted, which I thought was crazy, but you do what you
Also,
have
he
to do.
waited. Okay, so he waited until he was
Yes.
34. Ah,
Yeah.
gotcha.
I mean, it was the economy that forced him to that, because there were no jobs in Marion.
Yeah.
So it was a life-changing move for the family. My oldest son was 10 years old. We lived in Pleasant School District, and he was very involved in a lot of the sports programs out there. For a 10-year-old, that's really life changing,
Oh, yeah.
because now you're having to all your friends, and you're going someplace and having to reconnect and make new friends, and those friendships are already established, so you're trying to break into a group that and then you finally break in, and then you're up and move 4 years later, and now you're in a foreign country, more new friends. It was very challenging. it,
Oh,
the, those 27 years were very challenging. My hat's off to any military wife. My hat's off to any military personnel also. I mean, if you serve your country, you have my highest respect. But the family also gives up a
oh,
lot.
yeah.
A
Oh,
Yeah,
lot.
the
for sure.
family serves too. People don't
Yes.
understand that. Yeah.
Yes. I
Now,
mean,
was
my
that like
husband,
a?
he was deployed. He was employed in Iraq for 4 years. And then he came back from Iraq, and he went to Gitmo for a year. So we weren't even together for 5 years almost.
Oh, wow.
And then when he came back from Gitmo, being in Gitmo for a year, he came back to Washington, and then was immediately. I think it would. I don't even think he was back 6 months, and he was transferred to Colorado. So it when they're deployed for that long, it really plays havoc on family dynamics.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, it kind of gives you a unique perspective from the sense that you've traveled the world and you left Marion. So you were born and raised here, and you left in '84. Uh, got to see other parts of the country, other parts of the world, and then return to Marion. So,
What was
what
my
were your
impression when
impressions
I
upon
returned?
return? Yes.
I was I mouth open. What happened? What happened to Marion? Um, the downtown was desolate. Nothing. Buildings were. I mean, the homes were falling down. The neighborhoods, grasses growing, 3 feet tall. I I couldn't believe it. I'm like, why did I come back here? What is there here? And then I saw nothing happening. No rebuilding, no interest, no, and all the negative. And I thought, God, something's got to happen. There's too many people here to let this die. So what can be done? And that was another reason why I went into the politics, is because I believe that if we had a strong team of administration and council, that we could turn this around. And I think we still can. I mean, I see a lot of great hope. And it's the saying hope is our economy. The signs that Brad came up with, heroin was our economy, were the signs that I came back to.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what? What? And it wasn't long after that I figured out what it was all about.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. Like, people, you only know what you yourself have experienced. And I think that for people that never leave, not only do they only know what they themselves have lived and experienced, but they become immune to those gradual changes. It's kind of
Yeah.
like putting a frog in a boiling pot and
Right.
just gradually turning the temperature up until they're dead. You don't really notice it. And
Right.
Jason, Robert, and myself, we've only known Marion in decline. That's the thing. Like, whereas people that are in their 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, they remember a different Marion.
Yeah.
And, you have to harken back to those days and learn the lessons. That's why I like history and trying to put things in proper
Well,
perspective.
and
To
you
say
say
what
that,
happened.
right. And Marion, down when I was here, before I left to go to Washington, downtown Marion was booming. That's where we did all of our shopping. The mall was built, and we started going to the mall, but we still had businesses downtown. And I walked downtown a lot just to do shopping, shoe repair, and I mean, all that stuff, buying clothes, banking, everything was still downtown. And then the East End started building up. The mall went in, and then the East End started building up. And I do remember going back to Dad being on council. One of the big issues that he was always frustrated with is when, before the East End developed out there, he wanted to put service roads in so that 95, that you could go off of 95 and go to a service road to any of the businesses that you wanted to go to, and nobody would go along with it. And he was very frustrated about that. Now we are here, 50 years later, and guess what? We should have put service roads in.
Yeah.
It would have, eased up a lot of the traffic concerns that we have out in that area.
So,
Yeah, for sure.
kind
Hey,
of
Robert, so what questions do you have at this point before we get into Jason and the meat and potatoes of the IT issues?
Yeah. One thing I was just going to kind of add as a comment, because maybe some of the listeners out there, they might hear we're some Debbie Downers, or maybe we have this negative outlook, or, so on. And I think sometimes people who maybe want to sweep things under the rug or not acknowledge our problems will assert those things. Even back in my time in office, anytime you are a realist, you can be optimistic as much as you want, but if you're looking at everything through a rose-colored glass, you're not going to see the truth. So we've got to be realist here, and I think all of us would agree we probably are realists. We have hopes, great hopes for our community. Obviously, there's a lot of great things that are still happening. A lot of business owners coming together. I think our administration, Mayor Collins, I think he wants what's best for our community, obviously, as well. What would you say to that? What would you say to people who think that when we want to bring or we want to shed light to some of these issues in our community, that we're just Debbie Downers, so to speak? What would you say to that?
You've got to have faith, and you have to have hope. And if you hold on to that negativity and the Debbie Downer, then you're never going to see the promise that's there, the hope that's there. You've got to be open-minded. You've got to be willing to put forth some of the effort too. Start taking pride in what you have, and building on what you have. And then if you take pride in your house, even if you're renting, if you take pride, then your neighbor's going to start taking pride. And it's kind of like a chain reaction. And in my opinion, it starts with, if one person gets up and dances, everybody looks at him like he's crazy. Why is he up dancing? But then if the second person gets up and starts
Especially
dancing,
if I'm the person dancing.
I'm not the guy dancing. I promise you that.
oh,
I said,
come on.
especially if I'm the guy dancing.
But then you go from 1 to 2, and then there's a 4, 5, 6, and now you got the whole crowd. And
Yeah.
I kind of think that's you got to come to the dance.
Yeah.
You got to come to the dance.
Twila, I never liked dances though, so I'm not coming to the dance.
I love to dance.
So Twila, just to add, I think Cody was ready to segue into some of the other things that we have to talk about tonight. Obviously, you've been in there for a little while now. You used to be employed by the city of Marion. Can you tell us what role was you in previously when you were employed?
I did work for the city. I worked in utility billing department. And my job, I started out as cashier at the window, getting familiar with the accounts, applying your payments, filling out, forms, whatever you needed done. And then I moved from there. I went to doing the move-ins and move-outs. And if you moved in, you moved out, finalizing your bill, whatnot, the adjustments that needed to be made on the accounts, I made the adjustments and the such. So, and I was there 5 years. So.
Okay. So coming back to where we are today, obviously the biggest issues we're facing as a city right now is the financial situation. We have audits that still aren't completed. We have some elected officials that aren't responsive to your request. Can you kind of tell us more about where we are today, how we got here, and some of the, I don't know if you want to call it stonewalling or lack of answers, refusing to answer questions or provide information. Tell us more about where we are with that today.
Well, the financial situation didn't happen in 2024 with this administration. It happened years ago, and it's just kind of been like that snowball going down a hill and gathering up speed. And I think it hit the bottom of the hill and kind of exploded when we came into office in 24. Before I took office in 2024, I was going to city council meetings, and I did get like the budget we were going to have to vote on. And I really became concerned when I started looking at the numbers. They weren't adding up. They didn't make sense. A lot of unanswered questions. And I made it my mission that we were not going to pass that budget. And if we had to shut the city down, then we shut the city down. Of course, I didn't want to do that. But we took it apart by quarters, I guess you could say. We ended up passing that first budget for just the first quarter of 2024. And until we could hack away at where the money was at and where the expenses and just kind of piece it together, wasn't getting much help from the auditor's office. And so Bill wanted to hire a director of finance and budget, kind of a workaround, so we could get some answers, get a budget going. And that's when we hired Tacey Courtright. She was a godsend. That she pulled everything together. Of course, she had experience already in government financing and budgeting. So that helped immensely. And with some of the things that I already knew, and her and I worked very closely together, and was able to, over first quarter, second quarter, pulling more information in. By November of 2024, I don't think it was November, it was September, because I know that we had a budget by fourth quarter. So it might have been September, October that council passed a full budget. And the same week that we passed the 2024 budget, we had already started working on the 2025 budget, and putting that into place, because they two of them kind of went hand in hand with each other as we were putting things together and making 24 make sense. It was falling into place for 25. Of course, we had to tighten up the budget a lot. One of the things that we did was we took away all the capital improvements and capital equipment that the departments had in their budget. If they needed anything, they had to do a 5, 10, 15, 20-year plan. You tell us what equipment you have. You tell us what you need. What do you need? And wants and needs are two different things.
Yeah.
So it's not, we know what you want, but what do you need? So we started breaking things down on a what do you need basis instead of what do you want basis. And if we had the money, then we went through. One of the things the big thing that we ran into is in 2024, a lot of the fire truck, the ambulances, the EMS, the buses, all that stuff came in and delivered in 2024, and we had to pay for it, but it was all ordered in 2020, 21, and 22.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of those funds, for lack of a better word, hadn't been appropriated for. So we had to come up with the money because it was ordered, it's here, and now we got to pay for it. So when all that stuff started, it was very overwhelming when all that stuff coming in. And so people want to blame this administration for buying all this stuff. We didn't buy it. We're paying for it.
Yeah.
It was approved by the prior administration and council before, when COVID was going, and COVID was the big kicker in all of that, because everything, production stopped and nothing really started back up until 22, 23. Yeah. And so when all the production started back up, that's when all the deliveries started coming in then. Yeah. So
that bonded debt, Twila?
Some of it, yes, some of it is. And
was that part of the fire levy that was passed?
Some of it, the fire truck was, yes. The EMS was. Those
that truck cost what, 1.2 million or something like that, wasn't it? It was some ridiculous price.
Oh yeah,
but that's what they cost. I'm not saying they didn't get a decent deal. I'm just, those trucks are really expensive.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, they're not cheap. And I think council could have done a better job with that if they'd had some of the information that they needed when all that purchasing and I wasn't on, that was all before, that was done by the prior, I think 2023, I think was when all that was discussed. So I think if council would have had better financial information, that they could have made better choices on how they financed it
Yeah.
and the such.
And I think you made a good point, Twila. I think sometimes maybe people think it's an excuse because we are dealing with government, right? And we expect the very best of our government, and we should, rightfully so. But
Right.
I think we kind of underplay what really happened with COVID and how, I mean, this was an unprecedented situation. I remember when I was on council, Mayor Schertzer would still talk about, the catastrophes they had to deal with the 2008 downturn. And I mean, when you compare the two, I mean, that was an excuse for years on why we couldn't do this or why we couldn't do that, or we
I
didn't.
remember because that's when the layoffs all took place too.
Oh yeah, yeah, and it was a situation. Obviously, I mean, it was a big situation. We went into the Great Recession, but this is something that was unprecedented. And we had people that had to go to remote work, like you said, production stopped, so many things just slowed down, so it really compounded the issues. And
Yes.
I think where we want to go here is we don't want to just talk about the financial situation. Obviously, that's a huge part of it, and I know Jay's going to be able to speak to this more. And even with your experience as an employee at the city, we kind of want to also highlight some of the issues with our financial software. As I mentioned last night, Jay has put in probably hundreds of hours of research and writing since the beginning of just this year, going to what are we at, 83 now, I think, Jay, on audits and recapping our history there.
Yeah, we're back to 83. I'm slowly going up through council minutes and auditor reports, official auditor reports. And I think I'm in about the mid 90s right now. So we should be able to release real soon. It's real interesting stuff.
Yeah. And so, Twila, something I would like to ask, and then I'm going to pass it over to Jay. You were in some of those meetings after I had left office. Council were in meetings with the auditor of state, and I'm talking about public meetings, by the way, not anything maybe that might still be not released. But some of those public meetings, what were some of the things that those officials had said? I'm not sure if Belinda Smith had been in there when you had come into office. She was the head of the local government services division when I was in there. And I remember her telling me that it took them about 5 years when that New World software was first installed for them to really get things correct, or what they felt was correct, into an agreed upon process. And as we all know, it never really was correct. Right. Was there anything that was kind of highlighted in meetings after I left about the software?
After you left council?
After I left the auditor's office. The reason why I asked, Twila, is because I recall, and I can't remember exactly, I should have had this pulled up before.
I know we've had some meetings with government services.
Yes.
And they're still involved.
Yes.
So we still have conversations. I don't know. What's your question?
So we have a lady on our name, Tina, and I believe she was in some of those meetings as I was in the hospital and even afterwards. And she recalls Belinda being there publicly on record in council meetings talking about some of these software issues, even verifying that they had told us that they weren't going to complete our audit on time in 2021, which is really what started the audit stuff. This was, I know my former opponents want to bring up the IRS mistake. That was a separate issue compared to the audit thing.
Right.
With the whole 90-day trigger, you couldn't pull that data. And so I know some things were said about that. And if you don't have anything in regards to some of those public meetings, what can you say about?
When I came on council, they had contracted with Veritas to come in and do a forensic audit. And for whatever reason, so Veritas was doing the forensic audit,
Mhm.
and they needed access to the information. You can't do an audit if you don't have access, and they were being refused access. So when I think it was in late February, March, when I took over the finance chair position.
Who refused them access? Sorry, I'm just going to interject, but
Mhm.
I think that's important to know that who refused them
The
access.
prior administration.
Was that from Schertzer himself? Was it from, well, McGinnis was still auditor at the time.
It's my understanding that it was Kathy Chafin.
Kathy Chapin. Okay, so she was the service director.
Yes.
Yeah, at the time. She was the deputy auditor before that.
So she refused access to, or refused
That
Veritas, the contractor who the city has paid $300,000 in service fees to do this. Is that
all
correct?
I know is that when I was told by Veritas, because they weren't getting anywhere, so they reached out to me and asked me if I could help. You know, we can't do anything if we can't get the information. And so I contacted IT and was told that they couldn't release the information. So I went straight to Bill and I said, this is a situation and this is what's happening. And so IT was instructed to give Veritas, download the database to Veritas so that they could do what they were hired to do. And that was completed early March of 2024. And at that point, once they got access, then they started doing their forensic audit. And in the process of doing the forensic audit, it was discovered that there were modules that we had purchased, bought, paid for,
Yeah.
that weren't being used. They were turned off.
Yeah.
Critical modules. So why would you purchase those and not use them?
Yeah.
And
And this software, New World, was purchased in 2008, 2009, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so 2008, 2009, they purchased this. They turn off critical modules. When Veritas was hired to perform the forensic audit, are they limiting their scope to the past 5 years? Are they only going from the point of the misapplied payment to the IRS back in 2019, 2020?
2020.
Or are they going back further in time?
They're not allowed to. Anything that was closed, booked, we were not allowed to open. They weren't allowed to go into.
Who says they can't?
The state. They said that 2020, because we started to go back to 2020, and the state said the audit's complete, it's booked, you can't make changes. You can't. We could look, but we couldn't touch.
So if there was, let's say alleged criminal activity, if there was some kind of fraud or something, they're saying that they couldn't go back for even a criminal investigation. Or
I don't know. I don't think that that's what they were saying. I think what they were saying is that we were trying to get the book straightened out, right, so we could get these audits done. So there were adjustments made in January of 2021, carryovers, whatever you want to, whatever it was that came over from 2020 into 2021 that we didn't have explanations for.
Mm-hmm.
They were journal entries, and what were the journal entries for? And the only way we could find out what the journal entries were for was to go back to 2020. Right. And so then when they went back to 2020, they found that some of the entries in 2021 should have actually stayed in 2020 2020.
Mhm.
So they started making adjustments and they said, no, you can't do that. You've got to put everything back the way it was.
Mhm.
So that restricted us on. So to see if there was criminal activity back in, prior to 2020, I don't know how you go about that. I mean, do we have to have a deeper dive audit,
I think
an
The
IT
thing is,
audit?
and this is just me, like I'm, granted my background's in law and then also finance. My career's been in finance. But if it's true that there were issues with the system, I think with the utility billing, correct? Where you're saying it purged data after 90 days,
Mhm.
right? I mean, is that factual? We agree on that.
Yes.
I wasn't aware of that. I mean, like when you say purge, what were they purging? Like payments or?
I think
Robert?
maybe I think Cody maybe just is misusing the word. Maybe he's choosing the wrong word because not being familiar with the process. Obviously, purge probably is not the right word. More of just the data didn't stay on there after 90 days. So because it was on accrual basis, even though the accounting software has been stated by the Auditor of State's office that this was supposed to be set up on a cash basis, it was never set up on a cash basis.
Right.
And so that's what created the issue. And so this utility billing data would carry over from, let's say, 2020 to 2021. And if you don't back out that data within the first 3 months, I think is what they were saying.
And that's correct.
And then
The way you described it is correct.
exactly. And then after 90 days, if you didn't do that, then it was hard to retrieve that information or replicate it. And what's glaring about that is when I had come into office, neither the former deputy auditor, who was the current service director at that time, or the IT administrator, neither one of them had explained that to me. And so again, but even without that, if council and the finance committee wouldn't have voted down our private contract with a private accounting firm to complete the audit in March of 2021, we would have had all of those reports anyways. And so since that got kicked down the road, that's kind of why everything has spiraled to where it is now. And I think Jay has some really good insights here. I think we should probably plug Jay in here with his, 30 years of IT expertise. Jay, you want to take
Can
over?
I ask one question before Jay goes?
Yeah.
So if that's the case, because if you go back when they hired Veritas and they're going to try to reconcile and fix everything after it happened, that was 5 years ago. They've constantly come back and said, "Oh, it'll be another 30 days, another 60 days, whatever." It's just, can it be done? Is it even possible
Do you
to?
mean Veritas keeps coming back and saying it'll be another 30
The
days or?
explanations from council. If you read the news articles, if you listen to the radio interviews with members of council, Schertzer, going back in those years, uh, it was okay. We're gonna have this fixed within this time frame, and then the time frame gets pushed, and then the time frame gets pushed until we're here standing today, and it still isn't fixed. I just wonder, is it something that can be resolved? If that
The audit
data,
portion of it,
what's that?
the audit portion of it, or
Like the reconciling of the
I
books
think
going
it
back
can
then.
be. I think it can be, but we've got to know where we're at. And we don't know where we're at because the audits haven't been done. And until because we don't
Let
have
it
an
out.
auditor,
Let it out.
because we don't have an auditor and a treasurer that talk to each other, and they will not communicate with the mayor or me or council. We can't get any of our questions answered.
Mhm.
So we're trying to go through to get 2021 done. And I think we're close, but every time we think we're close, we're waiting on the auditor office the city auditor's office to provide the state auditor's office with information they need.
Why is she
And-
What
dragging her?
relationship do you have with Deputy Auditor Martin Watts? Like, that man has been in there. He allegedly has this experience, and is he helpful, or is yeah? I mean, Miranda has described her office repeatedly as garbage and has stated that she has no idea what she's doing. Now, I think that she says it with with a smile, and that I have the desire to learn and all that stuff. So I'll commend you for, I guess, wanting to do better. But when you look at that, I think Martin Watts, because we're before he got hired in at the auditors, wasn't he like some internal auditor for another government department? No,
I
Robert,
think he was
what's his
over at the
backstory?
county building.
He was
before
at-
he was
he-
at the county building.
Well,
Engineer.
what did he do there?
I don't know.
He was the bookkeeper for the county engineer's office.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of where we're at today with the current auditor. If there was any sense of character and integrity, to be honest, coming from the office, the right thing to do would be to just resign and allow the process to play out for a new auditor to be appointed. I believe it's by council, since she's independent, because there's no party affiliation there. So I think it goes to council to appoint. And honestly, get rid of the current deputy auditor Martin and start fresh. And I think that's why.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
I mean, Miranda made a comment to me, so this is right out of her mouth. I only have to be here 1 day out of 90. That's all I have to show up for. 1 day out of 90 days.
Mhm.
We had questions today. We've started working on the 2026 budget, and we've got questions. She hasn't been in the office for 2 days. Hasn't answered the emails. I am on the thread of emails from the state auditor with the audit. I know exactly what's happening. I'm in the loop. I can't do anything about it, but I'm in the loop. So I know when she's gotten an email, and I know when she responds, and I know when she doesn't respond, and she's not responding. So what do you do? What do you do? And, can the deputy auditor step in and answer her emails or send the reports that they need? Or, he could if he knew about them. But she doesn't even communicate with any of her staff.
Yeah, we've heard that from a lot of
Have
people.
you guys approached Martin directly, or do you, as just a procedure, do you always go to Miranda? So it's like, or is Martin just saying, "Oh, I don't take orders from you. I've got to get my order from my boss, Miranda." What's going on there?
To answer your question, Cody, I will not even walk into the auditor's office anymore. I just won't, because I tried dealing with Miranda directly, and I was accused of being intimidating. And I
Not you, Twila.
probably, but I mean, all I want is answers to my questions. What can I do to help you? What do you need? What do you need? And working with Veritas to get all that done. There were 5 of us. We had a conference call every other week. There was Veritas, there was Miranda, there was Casey, the budget finance director, me, and the state auditor on those conference calls every other week, working through this process. And I would get a call from the state auditor, or I would get a call from Veritas saying, Miranda hasn't done anything. Can you help us? Can you go in there? Can you help us? Can you, light a fire, find out where she's at? What's the holdup? And by the time that process was done, I was over the top fed up.
So
Why didn't she just delegate? If she's not going to do anything, you think she would say, "Hey, I'm delegating. I'm giving you an order, Martin, to."
I can't answer that, Cody. I don't know.
And the other thing that's really, I don't know, frustrating, I think, is that the last interview that I had listened to of hers, she was asked whether she had plans to run for re-election again when her term is up. And she said, yes. Why would you do that?
And what do we do? I mean, every day, what can I do? Because my hands are tied. I'm just the finance chair. There is nothing I can do. I can try to protect the citizens by watching the finances, but I don't think there's been a finance chair that's as involved as I am. I spend numerous hours at City Hall just trying to get to the bottom of stuff. Once Tacey had a handle and really had a good budget for us, I didn't have to do too much up there after that. But
Tacey wasn't doing the reconciling and working on those types of projects.
Nobody is.
Right.
So I think part of this is where Jay's going to come in, because we're only really talking about part of the picture, really. And Jay's critical to this because a lot of this is also technical. So Jay, can you explain more about this technical situation we're in?
Yeah. So as everybody knows, and the whole team knows, and my family knows, we've been poking around with the IT stuff for a very long time. And, we heard Mr. Lovell yesterday confirm that it's been a wild rumor for a long time. And we started getting closer when Landon was getting ready to run for auditor. And we had it narrowed down to one of the financial institutions or maybe City Hall. He told us that he had never directly witnessed it. And of course, now, everything that happened. So what we do in IT, when we start seeing red flags like missing reconciliation modules, switches that are turned off, these things are mandated by codes and laws. So in the IT sector, what we start doing is we start looking at a historical recap of all the crazy. And so what we did was this time we went back to 99 and the issues were still, there, financial issues and some mentions of IT issues. So we went all the way back to 83 as the most current audit we have. And before I go into this, I want to make sure everybody understands that Twila and I have talked in passing at council meetings off and on. She's very cautious in how she responds to these types of things. But I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Hopefully it cooperates with me. And I'm going to show just a brief document here. So if you guys can see that, it should come through pretty clear. These are the accounting practices that were broken. This is 83. These are the information technology issues. These are echoes that I'm constantly talking about. Certain departments, access control, terminal control, that's a big, big, big no-no. So, okay, so that's one audit. No, it goes and goes and goes all the way through the 90s, into present day. And going into 1997, 1998, it's actually even worse.
Yeah, it gets worse.
So these IT issues, lack of security controls, IDs and passwords were not assigned. Passwords were changed only about once. This is coming from the Auditor of State reports, not from thin air and not out of my head. We've consulted with financial people, Cody included, IT people all over the place, including people that I've worked with overseas. These are globally accepted IT policies. These reconciliation modules and all the crazy that's going on. I knew I struck a nerve with that when the team voted for me to speak at council because of the reactions. Now, you've confirmed that these switches were off. Do we know who turned them off real quick?
I can speculate.
I don't want to speculate. However, I will ask you a direct question. Have you ever noticed or known, you don't have to say when, any kind of system manipulations or password issues, physical security breaches, or things of that nature?
Yes.
I know that Mr. Rollins spoke to me about this, and I send this stuff to the public. This is part of our process. I send this to many people, not just in Ohio. I also send it to all of our IT nerds locally that we work with, and they're all just like, how does this keep going on? So what we have here is a economic problem. Cody's helped me a great deal with that, having a historian on the team's most excellent. We have a financial issue that started, we think, possibly in the 70s or 60s and festered, and then the IT stuff got into it, and it's just a snowball effect. And the reconciliation module and all these safety switches, without going into too many technical terms, are there to prevent things like
Exactly.
messed up account numbers. And that's another thing is there, from what I understand from interviewing multiple current and past elected officials, and witness to my team and screenshots and, recordings and whatnot. A lot of these financial systems are free-form typing, and that is just not industry standard. So like I gave the analogy, I believe it was eBay or something, or Amazon at council. In financial software, generally speaking, when you type in an account number, it's a specific format, whether it's a, bank account number, ACH, whatever it is. And the system will not take it if it's not in a specific format, which is what got us on the trail of zeroing in harder this time on the statistical or the historical audits. And man, what we found is it's going to come out, but I've sent you the 83 and the 97, 98, as well as a new assessment that we compared with the recent federal findings of IT breaches. And I know that I talked to you briefly today in chat, or the other day in chat, and you said that you've been following along with, I know some of these articles are huge. They're investigative.
Yeah.
They're not human pieces. These are intellectual articles, and we're trying to cut it down as much as we can. But unfortunately, these big ones, we got to keep them kind of long. So the original Silent Sabotage article is a novel. Did you read that one where it goes?
I did. It took me 2 days, but I think I got through it.
So what'd you think of that? Was that a pretty fair?
I think that's a pretty fair assumption of what's been going on. Yes.
And then we had the number 2, and we're getting ready to release the number 3. And I'll send that to everybody before we release it, including some council members. Now, I zero in on people who are in certain positions for certain reasons. And the reasons why I do that a lot of times is we've been doing this heavily since 2009, 2010, remotely at first and then in person, with Dennis Potts and I, kind of leading the crazy train, so to speak. And I'm aware of some historical issues back a while ago in which there were some IT issues that were reported, possible maybe account numbers or account balances that may have been changed in certain departments that I call echoes. And I use that a lot, but I'm not going to narrow it down to the department. I'm not trying to put anybody in a major spot here, but I mean, everybody knows. So the question is who knew how deep it got, and why did it take them so long to fix the reconciliation module and all these switches, and why wasn't it acknowledged immediately? It went unfixed from what I understand or can gather from the time it was installed until the time they finally admitted it. Is that correct?
It's my understanding it was part of the package, but was never activated, period.
Yeah, and in the IT field, this makes sense. These are clues. I did send to I'm trying to help you guys out. I know that a lot of times you and Bill, and this is highly technical information that needs to be looked at by people who actually outqualify me. I'm a sysadmin. I'm not a forensic investigator. However, I do understand financial software, and I understand PCI compliance, and I understand the financial rules that govern these things and why they're there. And those switches, the reconciliation module being not installed or turned on or misconfigured, the permission wars that went on, they can try to say they didn't go on, but we know they went on. We've talked to people, and it's documented. I mean, New World told people on multiple occasions that there were high-level administrative access accounts and they couldn't identify them or would not identify them. There's all kinds of just huge issues with the IT field there in Marion, and it's been going on. Like, this is nothing new. And these financial issues, the biggest explosion was definitely the tax remittance issue that was caused the safety switches being off. They didn't have any safety on the gun. You know what I mean?
Jay, just to kind of piggyback off of that, I think, and just to give further clarity to our audience tonight on why Twila also is compatible in this conversation with you as an IT expert, is because, as we were discussing earlier, Twila, you have some security clearance from the Army or Air Force. I'm sorry.
Yes, I have federal security clearance.
And
that's past clearance, right?
Yeah. I worked for the Department of Education, DOD, when I was in Germany, and had security clearance at that time. And then when I came back to the States, I worked for the state of Washington and had security clearance there. And then, of course, when I came to Marion, I was working for the city and had my security clearance there. In my years of experience, I worked payroll for 10 years. I did investments for a few years. I've done payables. I've done receivables. I've done audits. So I have a broad, range, hands-on of a lot of areas. So bank reconciliations, collections. I've done a broad variety of things over my 57 years of accounting. Mm-hmm. So when somebody says you don't know how, when you know how to do my job or you don't know how to do my job, I might not know how to do your job, but I know how it needs to be done.
Right.
I know how to balance I've been a treasurer, so I know how to do a bank reconciliation. I know how bills need to be paid. I know what POs are. I know, so I do know what I'm talking about. And I do know what I'm looking at.
These issues with like the multi-million-dollar negative balances and the crazy balance ledger sheets that were already present, as far as I'm aware, when Mr. Landon entered office, this is atrocious numbers. Like, some of these numbers, even back in the 80s, are out of control. And then you start merging in political wars. It's a war zone in politics. And Marion, I learned that real quick.
And Jason, on that note, this political wars, I'm not trying to make this political. I am just trying to get the bottom of it. Where do we start? How do we balance this? Well, we've done the forensic audit. Veritas got all that put together, and Robert hit on it earlier, because utility billing is on an accrual system and everything else is on a cash system. It wasn't compatible. And so that was creating a lot of the problems. Now, I know when I worked there, utility billing had a different cutoff date than the rest of the city. So we were like given after this date, this time, you don't put another thing into the system. And that was so that they could balance. They could balance the month because of the accrual and the cash difference in the such. That part of it, we have an idea maybe how we can fix it, but we've got to get through these audits first. And we've got to have an auditor and a treasurer that talk to each other.
Well, I can tell you one of the first things that can be done, or maybe not the first, but somewhere along in the process. And we actually started the process when I was in office in 2020, right after COVID hit. We had plenty of time, and we knew that the software was very convoluted a lot of issues. And so we started meeting with firms like Software Solutions.
Exactly.
They sat in my office and did whole presentations on a sandbox. And I mean, we did this over a couple of days of what this software looks like, what it could do, what it would mean for us. We did the same thing with OpenGov, which was a newer and pretty impressive, actually.
Right.
And so, but at the same time, that was going to require a whole lot of buy-in. So we were doing early research, trying to figure out what we were going to do. And then obviously, you would have to have a sandbox environment and kind of run two softwares at the same time for a while. So we knew all of that. And I think Jay's probably going to touch on that too, about the need for a new software.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. Like, I know that going over the audits ourselves, I noticed that, and Cody's a historian here and the legal guy, and you guys, Twila, you got finance experience, but I see where CPA firms were hired almost every year up until about 2007, 8-ish to do the audits. But that's just so weird to me. We'll leave that one alone for a minute, but I want to show you guys
real quick, Jay.
Yeah.
What was the political party composition of Marion city government in 2008?
Democratic.
I don't know much about politics. It would have been
mayor, Democrat law director, Democrat auditor, Democrat treasurer, and council was 7 Democrats and 2 Republicans. Yeah, the only Republicans were Schaber and Gilsdorf. So
to add to that, you had the deputy auditor at the time when she became deputy auditor. Before that, she was clerk of council.
Exactly.
Her brother was on council and even I think Cody, you went to the records. He didn't even recuse himself when he voted to appoint her. So when she became deputy auditor, you had her as deputy auditor. Her brother was on council. His business partner was council president. And then
her husband was assistant law director.
I mean, and it's no wonder why people have referred to this as the Democrat mafia, because it's almost been like a family business of sorts. Exactly. And when you have that kind of control in a family, obviously it's not good. We'll leave it at that.
So that, and you also have to put it in the context, historical context, from the macroeconomic level that 2008 you had the Great Recession. So that's, just as you said, shirts are constantly referred to as, I had to go through 2008. Well, desperate times lead to desperate measures.
Yeah.
So is it a coincidence that certain modules, according to our IT guru,
it's been corroborated across the board.
Software, they don't activate certain modules. They have access.
These are all red flags, man.
Who shouldn't have access. That's all we're saying, is that circumstantially, historically, it begs a big question.
And they're violating global IT security policies. These are things that are put in place for a specific reason, and these people are supposed to follow them. I know I haven't shown Twila the infamous screenshots that the team's seen. I will, however, share an assessment with the screen. And this is kind of come up. There it goes. I got a little bit of a lag here. Can you guys see it?
Yeah.
So basically what we have here is a breakdown of the New World financial system from 2021, I believe, March of 21. Landon, can you remember? I know I've shown you the dates on this.
Can I remember what?
2021. So these are screenshots of the former deputy auditor's permission levels that we have, and we have made the auditor of state and the investigation, the IT dudes, aware of it. Basically, this is unlimited access across every single system, because a lot of people don't understand New World's just not the auditor's office. It's citywide. and it kind of breaks down what these breach. And we'll release this, we condense down, but these are bad, like principals least privileged, segregation of duties. And like I've said 150 times, and I'll keep on saying it, if I was taking over an IT department that had these violations, and somebody brought all this information to me, and I looked at it, and I would look at it because I take it, this is serious. I would be going directly to the head of the company and being like, yo, y'all need to call in the forensic guys on this. This is bad. Like, we got permission wars, we've got documented thefts, we've got documented findings for recovery, we've got right after the software was installed, which, by the way, we were told by multiple current sitting officials that it was disputed, the New World system, that is. It gets worse and worse the harder we look and the longer we look. So we look back, and it's just atrocious. This is out of control.
And where did you get this from? This is an
assessment of the screenshots that we obtained from the public about the New World system with the former deputy auditor, then service director, permissions in the New World system.
Well, and that was one of my questions, is why, after she became safety director, did she still have access?
I'm not sure. It's not my job to prove a criminal investigation or anything like that. It's my job to blow the whistle, because these breaches are out of control. It's enough to where I went to my mother. She's always involved in this. My whole family's involved in this, guys. Like, Landon knows, he's worked with us for a while. All the core team. And I'm like, man, this is heavy, guys. Like, and they're like, no, if you don't report it, you're complicit in it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's exactly what we're going to do.
Well, and even if you knew at the time that things weren't right and you reported it, it went
Well, we tried to report on the auditor's office.
What's the word? It wasn't investigated. You could say this and that is going on, and it was like, okay, whatever.
Yeah. That's kind of why we reached out to the state, because I don't know this administration. I do know Bill, and I know Bill responded to me, and we appreciate that. And he's looking at it, I'm sure, very secretively. I'm sure that him and the auditor will have some talks. Maybe they're special investigation unit people. But man,
even like when I worked for the city in utility billing, I was the one that discovered the embezzlement that was going on by my supervisor, and I reported it, and it went unchecked.
Was that that's what I'm talking about. And earlier in the show, Dennis and I kind of slither around and investigate things as we went through
they claimed that it was discovered by the audit. No, they knew about it way before the audit.
Do we have any receipts for that?
Do I have any receipts for that? Other than I went to her supervisor and said, this is going on? No. I mean, that was, 15 years ago?
Right.
Can you share a summary of that situation, Twila, for those people who may not be aware of it? So they were embezzling funds.
So basically what was happening is, my battery's going low. Basically what was happening is she was manipulating accounts. Somebody would come in and make a cash payment, and she would take the cash and then manipulate a payment from an old account that had a credit balance on it. She would manipulate that to, I'm going to have to move because my battery's going.
You can walk around.
And who is she? Just so everybody's aware.
The utility billing supervisor.
Okay.
Was this Brenda?
Brenda Nuuso, yes.
Okay.
So she was, hold on, I'm trying to plug in my laptop. So she was manipulating accounts. How I discovered it was I was responsible for the adjustments. So when I was looking at my report at the end of the day, before I took it up to the auditor's office, closed out whatever. There were adjustments being made by people who were not in the office. So,
So
we
she was
were
coming in and adjusting things
so
after
we were
hours, or
told
was it another
no.
individual?
We were told when you go to lunch, don't log off of your computer and don't lock your cash drawer.
Like, give me your passwords, right?
Don't log off
Same
your computer
situation.
and leave your cash drawer open. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that. When I leave, my computer will be logged out and my cash drawer will be locked. And she said, well, if you don't, I'll write you up. And I said, write me up then, because I'm not leaving my computer logged on and I'm not leaving my cash drawer unlocked. But the other people in the office were leaving their computer logged in and leaving their cash drawer open. So when they would go to lunch, she would come and take payments. She'd sit at their desk. She would, be working or whatever. And then when I started seeing all these adjustments being made, I started, it was red flags.
Right.
So I was looking to see, why is this credit here and the same debits coming over? We're debiting this account, we're crediting this account. And then I started looking at the accounts and realized that they were old accounts that hadn't been looked at in years. Customers that had credit balances on them that, I don't know, for whatever reason, didn't get their refund. And it was, so the other two, so that's what I reported. And I took the paperwork with me to say, she was at lunch, he was at lunch, how can they make adjustments if they're at lunch? And this is an account that isn't even an active account. It had a credit on it, the cash drawers weren't balancing. It was just a combination of everything.
And the only way that they would have been able to, what year was this again? Clarify.
That would have been, I don't know.
Well, she was convicted in 2015.
So it was post New World. So back to the IT point, once again.
Right. It would have been in 2014 or 12 and 13, maybe. I don't know. That's that's a past I don't even want to revisit, because
right.
Things took a drastic turn for me.
So who did you report this to directly? How many people?
I reported it to Jay Shoup, who was the service director at the time. And he said he would take care of it. I, assumed that it would be taken care of. And it went on for almost another year. And it got to the point where I just went to my two co-workers and said, you guys can ignore this if you want. But when the state comes in and audits this, you two are the ones that are going to be going to jail, not her, because you're under your login, not hers.
So this went on for years, from what I can understand from research and talking to Cody and the community.
I think approximately 3 years.
So basically my point with that whole circus show is that it should have never been able to go on that long. And perhaps maybe the other IT professionals strongly feel, because it's just how this software works, and the financial people can speak up if I'm wrong. But if these controls were on,
if you couldn't have done it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, this is all bad, Twila. Like,
I think what we have here too is we had an unchecked Democrat administration. We'll call them Democrat mafia, since we kind of referred to them that way before. Who had just unchecked power. And I think it also calls into question why we highlighted the 2020 IRS mistakes so loudly. Obviously it was a mistake, but they needed somebody else to point the fingers at, because they've always done that for so long that they could never have fingers pointed at themselves for all their glaring incompetencies, and frankly cover-ups, because for
Exactly.
a while, there was a utility billing issue going on there that was never put out. Granted, the lady was prosecuted, but then we just move on, right?
Right.
And then same thing with the sitting council member in the first ward, who him and his business partner had rental properties, and I can't remember, Twila, if it was $50,000 in back property taxes or back utility bills that they owed, and there was no outcry from his Democrat colleagues, right? But as soon as you get a Republican in there and somebody in their office makes a mistake, now we're all up in arms. Now we're demanding
Right.
accountability. So what we have here is selective outrage, selective accountability, and we have to divert attention, right? We have to divert attention to this IRS mistake because it has to cover up all of the glaring issues over the last 20 years. And when we were talking about, Cody, you were talking about Schertzer and the 2008 crisis earlier. Why would we purchase, I believe it was $750,000 or more for the software, New World, and I believe they bonded it out, Twila. I don't know if you remember. They bonded out, this amount of money to purchase the software. And you're talking, when I left, I think it was $116,000 in annual maintenance fees at the height of the 2008 crisis. And then it takes them 3 to 5 years to even, supposedly get this installed correctly to agree upon a process. So I say all that because I'm trying to help our audience here put together the puzzle here of everything we're talking about. Obviously, everything was compounded in 2008. We had an administration that was unchecked. We had people that thought that they could just do whatever they wanted. And then, people were not being trained right on the software even then. I think, Jay, you even had the articles of Schertzer firing the utility billing supervisor, or maybe maybe we can touch on that quickly. I know we're running out of time, and we're probably going to have to do
We're over time.
Yeah.
We can do another one. I want to do one specifically based on this on an ongoing basis on the finances, because it's just so huge. This article I'm looking at, the silent sabotage one, is just massive. Mm-hmm. But we use it with our servers, our AI servers, to pull data out of and correlate it with new findings to match up, the red flags and echoes, as I call them. But I can just give a real quick recap of just after this software was installed. Immediately, there were 22 citations by the Auditor of State, and it was pretty significant. Untimely bank reconciliations, all kinds of mentions of software issues and craziness, late filing.
All the things that they said never happened until I got in office, right?
Right. And those findings were still there when we came into office, and we've tried to correct as many of those as we can. But we still got to get through these audits, because I know there's going to be more once we get through 21, 22, 23, 24. But why weren't these questions, the questions that are being asked of this administration, why were they not asked of the prior administration?
Right.
We reported the first article is on there too. It's just in a weird format. I can find it and put it back on the watch page and put it in the comments and stuff later. But basically, when we entered media officially 2017, 2018-ish, we had already been talking to Ed, but we got closer to him, and we started talking to Mr. Landon around, 17, 18, somewhere around there. And we started noticing financial things and talking to Landon and talking to people in the community. We use community. I use the term community elders. This organization was started by people far older than me, in my mom's age group, or some of them were older. And, the kids that my brothers went to school with, they're 16, 18 years older than me. So we talked to them about all of this stuff, and this is just so bad. And it's mentioned, but we started reporting on this in around 2018. And I cannot tell you the insanity that went down when we started reporting on this. I don't know what was going on or who was doing it, but the entire family, the entire team, everybody saw it. Everybody heard it. The comments, the slander about children, underage children in the family, threats coming through, and all of witnessed some of this too. We had electronic attacks, just insane. It was by far the worst political insanity I've ever seen in my life firsthand. And it was blatantly obvious at that time that we needed to look closer at the money. So that's what even when I was down, we were kind of, not with Landon, of course, but my family and I had to take some time for my family for health issues, in case anybody didn't know yet. We talked about this stuff, and people were kind of keeping me loosely updated on what was going on with Robert. And when we came back in, I didn't just pull Robert on the team. I don't do that. That's not me. I'm not political. I don't play games. So I reached out to him and touched base about some of this stuff and asked him clarifying questions while I was putting the pieces together in the background. And these screenshots were supplied to the entire team in group chat, between me and Landon. And it didn't take me long. Once I got back, far enough to try to find, look closer at the IT stuff, and I started talking to officials, and multiple people in the current administration have said they're aware of these things. They said they're aware of physical security breaches. And this open server room situation, I have a serious problem with that. That is the last line of defense for an IT infrastructure. Consider it a vault. If you don't have business being in an IT server room, you do not need to be in there. I've seen vice presidents of companies that do not have.
Jay, this server was in the auditor's office, and it was in the same room as where the city safe was, amongst filing cabinets. So auditor's
And break
office,
room.
right? Yeah, in the break room. I mean, it was just this hodgepodge room, and I raised concerns about that. In fact, I even asked for the service director and the safety director to have security cameras installed in there, because I needed to be able to know who was going in and who was going out. I even had to request reports of the electronic key card access to my office, because that kind of upset some of those city employees that came in there regularly, because they could just walk in. And I'm like, no, you don't just walk into a bank. And granted, they didn't keep thousands of dollars in the safe at any given time. They got to make timely deposits, but whatever was there until it's deposited, and whatever sensitive documents are there, not to mention the server. You can do some great damage, Jay, as you know, if you know what you're doing.
If you can get to the server and you have unlimited administrative access, there's very little that you cannot do.
Right.
Like, you can log in, you can try to, most everything can be recovered. That's what the IT forensic audit's about. The financial audit and the IT audit are two completely different things.
Right.
Yes.
I know there were general controls audits done, but those are kind of like a brew, make sure that nothing completely crazy is going on, that's blatantly obvious. But obviously this has been going on.
Right.
Since at least we only have records right now back to 83.
Right.
But I've started digging.
Remember, the financial audit is only going back to 2020.
2021.
Or 2021.
2021. Right.
In an IT scope of the finances, I'm not a financial guy. I do understand these numbers, however, and it's just atrocious. Like, when you're looking at these things, you got to have the right scope in an IT investigation. I'm assuming it's the same way in a financial investigation or any investigation. If you're not looking at the right evidence, you're not going to see it. So this is just 99.
And let's clarify to our listeners that these audits done by the state, you'll hear auditors say, well, we're testing your utility billing, or we're testing this and that, because they're only taking a small sample size, because by law,
exactly, that's exactly true. They send 6 months ahead. This is what we're going to audit. So you have 6 months to gather up whatever records, files, move whatever money you want to move, make any adjustments, corrections, whatever. And they don't look outside of that area. So if that area meets the test, if you've got the answer, because I asked this question of the state, why wasn't this or that or whatever caught? And they said, if the question is asked and the question is answered, we can't do anything else.
Right. As long as it's explainable. However, I will say before we start dwindling down here, we've taken way longer and more of your time than we wanted to. I mean, we're happy to sit here and talk forever, but I'm sure you want to sleep. You look tired.
It's been a long day.
These issues are just, these IT issues mixed with the blatant disregard for IT security policies, including physical policies, coupled with the decades and decades of financial issues that go along with them, are not explainable.
I think
unless they're looked at real close.
Closely. But I
right.
think with Bill bringing on a budget director of finance and stuff, that has helped immensely. We've been able to understand a lot better where we are financially. The auditor and the treasurer might not agree on what we have in the bank or whatever. We pretty much operate on what we know we have. Mm-hmm. What we can say, do we have more? Do we have less?
Yeah. When I reached out to some of the people in the higher level IT and the private and a couple that have worked or do work, I'm not real sure if they still work, government agencies or entities that are associated with government with clearance. They were all just like, what is this? Like the first questionnaire that I sent them was during the first article where I asked them about the bank account numbers and the free form typing, as I was calling it earlier. And they were making fun of me saying, are you getting old? Like, what are you sending us crazy emails for? And I'm like, I need you to reply to this. You don't have to be specific. And they all said the same thing. Like, this is highly suspicious. Like, and they said the same thing I did. And all the people in Marion that I've showed this to that have an IT background are all just, they don't even know what to say.
Yeah. Well,
right.
Jay,
getting through the audits is going to be the key. And right now they're projecting if we stay on track, they get the information in a timely manner that they should have the audits completed by July of 2027. And that will be through 2026.
And that's the financial audit, correct?
Right. Well, yes, for the city, Yeah, the financial statement, the audit for this. Yeah. So once we get through that and we get back their summary of findings and the such, then we know exactly where we may need to home in on, this needs to be fixed, this needs to be fixed, this needs to be, but until we get those summary of findings back, and we can't get them until they're done. So the key to everything right now is getting these audits done.
Right.
That is the priority. That is the precedent. And anybody that isn't 100% in on getting this done in a timely manner, they need to go. They just need to go.
Twila,
do you think they'll be successful though, Twila? I mean, they've been saying this for 5 years that, it's just going to this amount of time, this amount of time, this amount of time. I mean, what's the likelihood that you get to 2027 and it still ain't done? What do you think?
We're going to get there. I'm just going to leave it at that.
Before we let you go, I heard from a very credible source, not yourself, of course. We've only really talked in passing and slightly in chat, but sitting officials have told me that there may be a change in physical hardware coming up. I would seriously suggest that if you were looking at, replacing your physical hardware and your servers and your switches, that until a decision is made to move forward or not, with a forensic IT audit in correlation with, the finances, that be kept under lock and key somewhere, because those things may hold a lot of keys. I mean, there's other ways to put together a IT forensic audit: logs, records, statements, software vendor calls, code, all kinds of stuff, emails. But man, the servers go, it's going to make it a lot harder and probably way more expensive.
It begs the question, and I'm going to leave this as a teaser here, and this is going to be part 2. It begs the question, why hasn't there been a recall on the current city auditor? And that is, even though, and Twila, you and I we've talked about this charter. We didn't even get into your opinion on the charter. Maybe we can do that on part 2. As good as a charter can be, we still have the potential to recall officials under our statutory form of government. And so I'm going to leave that there as a teaser. That is a solution for our community if the community or somebody chooses to pick that up in the community, for somebody who chooses to stay in there and stonewall every single person that is trying to fix this problem. So
Takes 3 people.
that's going to be my parting gift to this show.
All right, Twila, do you have any closing remarks?
Just know that I am doing the best I can to protect the citizens of Marion, trying to watch their money be spent in a responsible and professional manner. And just bear with us. We're trying.
Well, we thank you for joining us here at OMW, the Watchmen's Report tonight. So our special guest, Twila Laing, Marion City Councilwoman from the 4th Ward, and also our guest host, Robert Landon, Jason Foreman, and I'm Cody Higley. So until next time, a watchman always stays vigilant. Remember that. Have a good night.
Have a good night, guys.